South Africa, it's 5 minutes to a military coup. We are 5 minutes to a military coup. One day we will sleep, and when we wake up, General Rudzani will be the president of this country by force, and no one will stand in his way. The thing is, Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't even know that General Rudzani and a delegation is in Iran meeting the Iranian military, to an extent whereby General Rudzani has pledged political and military support to Iran. So they are going to be in partnership with Iran. Whenever News 24 reported this thing in the morning, I was like, no, it's a great initiative. The main fact that America is fighting us and we are retracting from America, we're going on the other side. I was like, okay, fine, it's a great initiative. But when I discovered that Cyril Ramaphosa, as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of South Africa, it's not aware that General Rudzani, the commander of military in South Africa as well, it's in law, it's in Iran with a delegation, to an extent whereby they even went to pledge a military and a political support, as News 24 reported. Our guys were in disaster. In fact, we're not even 5-2. 1 minute left. 1 minute left. One day I can tell you, when we sleep in this country, the following day we will wake up while the military is in charge of everything. People are tired. I guess the military is tired. And this thing started when you will hear stories that soldiers didn't get paid. They're telling them that there is no budget. What. You understand all those things. Those are circumstances that are building up to this phase where we are now. With soldiers, sometimes you will hear stories like soldiers, they didn't get paid. They're telling them about budget. They're waiting for the next budget. Where. All those things they're building up. About 68% of the budget allocated to SANDF, it goes only to salaries. Then it means the other 32 must buy weapon, buy food, maintain the place and everything. Then it tells you something. It also, you hear stories like Angie Motera, as the minister of SANDF, has instructed General Rudzani to reinstate someone. General Rudzani refused. Like, guys, I'm telling you, these things are building up. One day we will sleep, and when we wake up, we will discover that General Rudzani is the president of this country, because we don't have a president in this country. And I understand the frustration, honestly. I understand the frustration. Honestly speaking, I do understand the frustration. It's getting worse each and every day. This is okay, count.
So the big news in South Africa today is that the army general went to Iran and made pronouncement on international policy of the country that upset everybody, including the president. And the president said, I never knew that this guy was going to Iran. And now people are calling for the army general to be fired. But let me give you the context of what has been happening in the last few months. A month ago, the minister responsible for the security cluster, including intelligence, issued a report that said there is a threat of a coup d'etat in South Africa. They know the people who are planning a coup d'etat, and they have neutralizing them, or they are trying to neutralize them. This is the first time, I think, since democracy, that the words coup d'etat and South Africa are used in the same sentence, because there's a good reason for that. Let me tell you why. A few weeks earlier, before the minister issued this report, one of the police generals, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, came out and had this press conference where he accused everybody, including his boss, police minister, of corruption, accused the judiciary of corruption, accused the prosecuting authority of corruption, and that the government is actually being run by the mafia. But that is just one person who said that. A few months before, the Navy chief came and accused the National Treasury, or the Ministry of Finance, of collapsing the military and making it impossible for the military to protect the country. That is after his colleague, the Air Force chief, also came and complained that the Air Force does not have the budget to maintain the aeroplanes that they have, or the fighter jets that they have. Therefore, they are unable to protect the country. That is, a few weeks after his colleague at the funeral of one of the soldiers who were killed in DRC came out and accused the government of totally collapsing the military. Now today, their boss, the army chief, there are people calling for him to be fired because he made this pronouncement that South Africa will always stand with Iran and not with Israel. So now people are saying this guy should be fired. Now putting all of these things together, putting all of them together, including the report that the Minister of Intelligence issued about the threat of a coup d'etat, it might be that the next few months the country might be on a coup alert, like a seriously coup alert, because this is just not a threat. You have the military, you have the police fighting against the politicians. This is something that no one has ever envisaged that was going to happen, but we find ourselves there. The military and the police are going head to head against the political heads. We might, and that's a big might, we might just be entering the territory of Burkina Faso in South Africa. So watch the news very closely.
Let's talk about General Mapanya. I hope I'm saying it correctly. General Mapanya's visit to Iran. Alrighty. So just to maybe give you an idea of I was about to say, let me give you an idea of Lesis Kak. My chances are gonna have a field day. So yeah, let's shit, I feel like Wendy Williams. Let's spill the tea. So the army general went to Iran just recently and made some utterances saying that South Africa stands with Iran against oppression and yada yada yada, good fish stuff. In a sense, just speaking about the geopolitical conundrum that is currently taking place between Israel and Iran, right? He was referring primarily to that and what Israel is doing. Now, there's been a huge uproar on this, right? I want to firstly just reiterate from what I heard the general saying, is he says everything that we agree with here in South Africa. It's what we also stand for. Here are the twists, right? Here's the first problem, and this is why the president has also really been annoyed by it and has distanced himself from the statement. It's not that the government of South Africa disagrees with the analysis and not with the analysis, with the statements. Here's Ramaphosa's first debacle, right? We are in the middle of a very delicate period. South Africa, or Ramaphosa, let's firstly understand Ramaphosa's mindset. Ramaphosa is very economy focused, right? He's focused on fixing the economy. Now, whether we want to paint this however we want to, we still live in a Western dominated world where America still dictates how things are gonna go. From what I'm seeing from Ramaphosa's strategy is he's putting forward diplomacy to sort of to maintain stability in our economy. Understand, South Africa has to play this game not from a position of strength, but South Africa has to play this game from a position of strategy, right? We have to be able to outmaneuver. We don't have the ability to say F you, like for example China. China can afford to say F you to America and still rely on its large populace to generate the value in the world and keep the economy sustained. Because of colonization, we have been weakened. Our position has been weakened. We have to rely a lot on still on our value, what we produce, on our output, but also we still have to maintain the right relationships, because any day, if America decides they're going to sanction us, it's going to be a very difficult one. Ramaphosa is on his second term. If we get sanctioned here, he's going to be the worst president ever, and he won't get a chance to revive the economy. Let's put that into perspective first. So currently, South Africa is under negotiations with America, specifically over these 30% tariffs, maintaining a market in America. As much as we don't agree with America from a foreign policy perspective, South Africa still understands that they still have a responsibility to the populace, because when it's all said and done, once again, Ramaphosa is held accountable on his abilities to fix the economy. He's given us land expropriation, he's given us NHI, he's given us everything that we've been complaining about, but still the South Africans are not happy purely because of the economic factor. We still don't have jobs, and that's what South Africans are nailing him to the cross on. So essentially what I see as Ramaphosa's pressing issue right now is trying to stabilize the jobs and in a way stabilize the South Africa's economy. You're right. So we're currently in negotiations with America on the tariffs and everything. The last thing we need is a general who is not being sanctioned, that Ramaphosa is not aware of, saying certain things, even though we agree with the country, with the rhetoric, but it really does jeopardize the negotiations that are currently taking place between South Africa and the United States. This was something that was supposed to be relegated to DIRCO, which is our international affairs. But the general, I feel as though, was a bit overzealous. He was too excited. Nothing that he said was in a way contradictory to our foreign policy. But it's just the worst time that he could have said this. This was not the best time that he could have said this, because now it sort of throws the spanner in the works, right? Especially with our negotiation with the United States. Second element to this is the DA and Israel. Okay, let me just not firstly point, let me firstly connect the dots and let you be the one to decide. We know who controls the media here in South Africa. I feel as though the reason why we have this outrage is, number one, we know who controls the media. And obviously the general is in Iran. Are you connecting the dots? The DA's outrage, right? The DA's outrage is because President Ramaphosa fired one of their ministers for going to the United States, Israel, sorry. Now the DA is in a sense using the media. All of this media sensationalization is, for me, unnecessary. I feel as though under normal circumstances this would have been something like, whatever, or it would have been something to reprimand, but now the DA is putting pressure. The reason why this is circulating so much around the media is because the DA wants to put pressure on Ramaphosa to fire the general, which I'm seeing as a potential of happening purely because, number one, Ramaphosa is now forced to be consistent, right? Is now forced to be consistent in how he applies his rulings. If he fired the DA minister, he's going to have to also go after the general. There's that pressure that the DA is putting on him, as well as the sensationalization of the media. This is being blown way out of proportion. It's not a coup. I don't know as yet, because I don't know, maybe just, I think they're trying to plant a seed where it says that the general is trying to commit a coup, which wouldn't make sense. Iran is our biggest ally. We have a very close relationship with Iran. It wouldn't make sense for Iran to house a general who's planning on waging a military coup on South Africa. It doesn't make sense. So what I'm seeing as the potential for this media circus and everything that's currently happening is, number one, the DA is looking for their pound of flesh. They want to throw the ANC under the bus purely because they fired their minister for doing something very similar. Did the general go to Iran unsanctioned? I highly doubt it. The president says he was not aware. It doesn't mean that the minister was not made aware. It could be, what I'm expecting could have happened was the general went there for official government business in terms of just best practice, knowledge sharing with Iran. However, he just got too excited and started spilling how South Africa genuinely feels. It's not the worst case scenario. It's not the worst thing to happen. The timing was the worst. That's what I'm seeing as everybody's biggest concern. Not necessarily the DA. DA has their own agenda, but from the ANC and presidency perspective, it was just the worst time to do so.
There's a new controversy now involving the South African National Defence Force head, General Rudzani Maphonya, which has got to do with statements that he said in Iran when he visited there to visit the head of the armed forces in Iran for whatever reason. Now, there's lots of things that are being said here about whether the Minister of Foreign Affairs knew what he was going to say, whether the President knew about the trip, the Minister of Defense knew about the trip, and so on. Now, this kind of chaos is a national security risk. Let me explain why. You see, government is supposed to act in a coordinated way. Minister Pakstow, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, is busy trying to arrange a trade deal with the United States of America so that we do not suffer from tariffs of 30% as Donald Trump has imposed on South Africa. Now, South Africa does about $3.2 billion of trade with the United States per year. Multiply that by 18 if you want to get to rands. With Iran, it's a tiny fraction. Now, that's not to say we must not make friends with other countries. But when another senior government official is busy trying to negotiate something which is affected by relationships with another country, you want to be careful what you're saying, because you don't want to undermine what they're saying. You don't want to undermine what Minister Ronald Lamola is saying or what he is trying to do. You do not talk to them. You don't tell them what this is about. You don't agree with them what can be said publicly and what cannot be said publicly. For instance, you do all of that, you go on your own. And now they must do damage control on your behalf because you feel that you've got a right to say anything that you want to say. That is not how a well-coordinated government is supposed to work. That is chaos. And chaos is a national security risk. So it's very important that we understand at least my unhappiness with the situation from that standpoint. No single minister has a right to go and undermine another minister or senior official of government who's acting in the interests of the South African people. Now, people might think that we don't care about the United States or we shouldn't care. But if somebody works for an American company that exports goods from here to America, that person is worried about their job. We can't come and say their jobs don't matter. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs directly and indirectly that are dependent on trade with the United States. They need stuff from us, we need stuff from them. And people's lives depend on it. You can't then have somebody from the military go and say things which are going to compromise what Minister Lamola and what Minister Tau are trying to do to save jobs of real South Africans. So I'm sorry if people feel that the general is free to say whatever he wants to say. Imagine if John Steenhuisen went to another country and undermined what his colleagues are saying. Would we be okay with that? Of course not. You can't be okay with it. And so it's very important that this chaos, where people feel free to say and do anything at any time, comes to an end. And unfortunately, it comes down to the authority that the president exerts over the entire thing, whether it is the army or the cabinet. It's not a good thing when people feel emboldened to go and say things that the president might need to explain later, and they don't tell the president what they're going to say there, or they don't make an assessment of how it's going to affect relationships, other strategically important relationships. That's chaos. It's not acceptable. It really is not acceptable. And South Africans must not encourage that kind of thing.